All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Dragons in the Dining Room, a place where you guys can come and chit chat about whatever topic is going on today or bring up your own. Today starts a new journey for Dragons Discourse. A friend of our stream, the Grouch Couch, specifically Turkey, had brought up in our Discord that it would be neat to have a review on all of the classes so that new players, old players, pretty much anybody who just wants to take a look at a new class or get a review on their class can find it all in one location. And look at that, I've got a Gangrus. How you doing today? Um, Now, a little bit less on the lore, a lot more on the going over the class itself. But lore does take a bit of a does kind of go hand in hand with it based on your game style and things like that. Thank you for the cheer. Um, so I'm going to go through this starting with the player's handbook classes. We'll start with the Barbarian, work our way through, and then the last one we're going to look at is the Artificer, because that's the newest one. So we're going to start with the core classes first here and make our way through. I am, as a head start on this one, I am going through all of the source material. I will not be covering the Unearthed Arcana subclasses because those are considered playtest material. Um, I, until they're released in a source book, they're very much prone to change. Hello, Axel. I really like that emote. Um, it's a hamster throwing hearts in the air. Uh, I don't have access to Tasha's right now, but when I do get access to it, I will definitely be looking into that and doing a review of the information in there because that changes a lot of from what I understand, Tasha's is going to change a lot of what's already in the player's handbook. So I will be doing a compare and contrast. Um, because yeah, that's going to be a significant adjustment in comparison to what, well, people like myself who've been inundated with the way that D&D has been up until this point. Tasha's is going to change a lot, so I want to give it its own. I want to give it justice. I want to give it its own spotlight. This is going to be a little bit different. These are just going over the mechanics of the classes and where they sit currently. Um, Feel free as I'm talking, please bring up whatever you want, ask questions, um, agree with me, disagree with me, whatever the case may be. This is my own view on this. I am not speaking for anybody but myself. Um, and I know a lot of people take this the wrong way, but I still have to say it. I am also coming at this with roughly 32 years of D&D under my belt. So a lot of what I say is going to be with an old school mind. So don't worry. Don't worry too much if you disagree with what I'm saying. I have an open mind at the same time. Um, Barbarians need more oxytocin? Eh, potentially. So that actually comes into play a little bit later here. So we're actually going to start this off with, I mean, you guys can read. I'm giving you the transcript of what I'm going through. So if something I say doesn't come across, maybe how it's written might be a little bit easier than how I'm saying it. But again, please feel free to pipe up. Please feel free to give ideas or whatever. This is definitely discourse. You guys are free to say whatever you'd like in regards to this content. So, starting this off, um, we are going to ask the question, what is a barbarian? We have to take a look at that from two different points of view. The first point of view is role play. The second is the mechanics. Both of those go together because when you're sitting at the table, both of those things are your character. So, what is a barbarian? Let's look at the role play first. A barbarian is a warrior that gains almost supernatural power through harnessing anger, rage, pride, fury, pain, righteousness, or any other strong emotion. Um, for example, the anger, fury, or rage of a warrior who's fighting against the beasts that destroyed their people, the pride and righteousness of a warrior who's defending their people against a tyrannical leader, the pain and fear of a warrior who's been enslaved and has seen a glimmer of hope toward escape and vengeance. Now, those are just a couple of ideas, but I really want to focus on the strong emotion thing. Yes, barbarian plugs for oxytocin. Strong emotion is something that I think better describes a barbarian because it's not necessarily anger. It could be pride. It could be, we're playing with the word oxytocin here. Maybe rage is a form of euphoria instead of fear or pain. And this is where some of that lore stuff comes in, Gangris. There are stories about warriors in battle who would take certain substances that would give them heightened senses, heightened abilities, and it was tied into that euphoric state that they got into, as opposed to just purely grabbing onto that rage. So maybe you want to play a barbarian that that has this supernatural power based off of a different emotion than what is normally held to the barbarian. The mechanisms which drive someone are as complicated as the players themselves. Some fight for love, some fight for fighting, some fight for the love of fighting mushrooms. You are absolutely correct, Gangris. The fighting mushrooms, they are my hero. And actually, the reference I made to taking certain substances referred to a certain chemical compound that was created during the World War II, when there was a lot of studies being done for super soldiers. Now, something else about this is going to be a fun session if I can't talk now. Another thing about barbarians is where they come from. They can be tribal, living in a culture where they're constantly traveling. Their customs are foreign to people who are not part of the tribe. They can be members of a society where combat, war, or strength are signs of power and can make them rulers or leaders or raise them in social status. They could be educated warlords who've asked for power from their ancestors, and the spirits give them this strength. They may even be bestial, having left to survive in the wilds, forgotten by all of the world and raised by wolves. Once again, barbarian doesn't necessarily preclude someone from being a civilized person until battle happens. You could definitely have a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing going on where, for the most part, they are this bourgeois elite walking around in a powdered wig and speaking in this I just lost it. Um, oh shoot! Give me 1 second here as my brain stops. Sorry about that, guys. I had to ask my wife for some help on this one. Um, but the Middle English, like you'd see in Bibles, ye, thou, thus. So you have this barbarian who he speaks in this hoity-toity manner, but then combat happens, and all of that is lost to their barbaric um, nature, and combat consumes them. So you can really have fun in role play with what a barbarian is. And yep, yep. So you can really have fun with it and play around with what it is. But one of the big things that happens with barbarians is this emotion overwhelms them and gives them almost supernatural power. Um, Now, mechanically, and this is the part that deals with the dice, a barbarian is a physical class. Strength and constitution is their primary stat. Um, You'll rarely see a barbarian using magic since rage makes spellcasting all but impossible. There are some spells that they get access to. There are some spell-like abilities that they have access to. But actually casting and controlling magic while raging, they're not allowed. A well-built barbarian can dish out a lot of damage, especially since they get bonus damage while raging, and at later levels, they get more damage from their critical hits by gaining an extra die. On the other side of the coin, certain barbarian builds can soak up damage like a sponge, making them feel almost invulnerable at times. There are certain builds that you can wail on them forever, and it's like they don't take any damage. If you want to be a bruiser in your group that can dish out or take the damage that comes from battle, that's a barbarian. Controlled and restrained bloodlust despite their normal characteristics. Correct, Gangris, that is exactly it. You know, I'm not so sure about that, DM Loxy, but that's an interesting thought process. Um, Barbarians do, however, have an Achilles heel in that they are vulnerable if their opponents can use crowd control to good effect. Without being able to get into the fray, a barbarian can lose out on their rage, causing them to be just as vulnerable as the rest of the party. While a barbarian is tied up, either by a barrier, an effect that leaves them incapacitated, or an effect that removes them from battle, their abilities are useless in many cases. Early level barbarians will simply lose their rage. At later levels, their damage and survival abilities will be moot if they're not in combat. So mechanically, barbarians need to be in the fight. They really do not do well at range in most cases. There are outliers, there are exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, barbarians are much more comfortable mechanically being nose to nose with whatever opponent they have. It allows them the ability to use their rage abilities and their features much better. And as we look into the subclasses, you'll see how that plays out. But the other part about it is this is a class that it hits hard and it can take the hits. If you don't want to have to worry about bookkeeping, if you don't want to have to worry about making sure you're in the right place, Scarecrows, it has been a long time. How the heck have you been? You've come just in time. I'm starting a brand new series on the show. We're covering all of the classes in D&D and what they're about. Axel, if you trap a barbarian in hypothetically a resilient sphere, would that suffice? Technically, no. A barbarian would lose their rage because a barbarian, in order to keep rage, must try to attack an opponent or take damage. Holy smoke, strep and COVID. I'm glad you're feeling better. Um, there are some DMs out there that will allow a barbarian to cause themselves damage to maintain rage, but that is a homebrewed rule. If they're in a resilient sphere, they cannot attack somebody outside the sphere and they cannot take damage, so that takes them out of the battle and makes their rage abilities moot. So let's move on here a little bit, and we're going to take now for anybody who's out there looking at this. A lot of this is copy pasted from the player's handbook. I'm just covering it briefly for you guys so that we can look into all of this. I have one barbarian that I play. His name is Utgar Balderkin. He is a battle rager barbarian, which is a specific barbarian class to a dwarf. They're fun. In my opinion, my humble opinion, barbarians are technically easier to play than fighters. But that's my humble opinion. Wizards and Rangers, I love the two of them. I have not played a cleric in 5th edition yet, so I'm not quite sure how well I like that one. So, looking at the mechanics of a barbarian, the first thing that you'll note is they have a hit die of 1d12, which is the highest hit die of any other class. For those of you out there that want to give the soccer ball some love, there you go. It's one of the reasons why they can take a whole bunch of damage, because it is the highest hit die out there. Yep, this is all 5th edition stuff. So if you want to learn a little bit about 5th edition and what the classes are like in comparison to, I'm guessing you play 3.5, this will be a fun series for you. Proficiencies for armor. They are proficient in light and medium armor as well as shields. They are not proficient in heavy armor, and that will come into play as a very important thing once we start taking a look at the features of what a barbarian has. The weapons they have access to is all of them, both simple and martial weapons, so they can choose whatever weapon they want, pick it up, and they should be able to use it. 3.5, yep. Okay, so you just haven't had the chance to play 5th yet. So yeah, this will be a really good way for you to see a compare and contrast to what you're familiar with. Saving throws, as I mentioned earlier, there's strength and constitution. Those are the two abilities that you tend to sink your big numbers into. Skills, animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. We'll cover a little bit later here. We'll cover how well the different skills are for you and some insight onto those. Hey, Jaded Arsenic. Starting package. You can choose from these ones, and it's kind of leads you to see where a barbarian tends to be. The first choice you have is a great axe or any martial melee weapon. Great axe is one of the biggest, heaviest hitting weapons out there. Martial melee weapon, choosing something otherwise, kind of plays into the style of barbarian you want to play. Your second choice is between 2 hand axes or any other simple weapon. Hand axes can be used both as ranged weapons or melee weapons. You're noticing kind of heavy on the melee side here. The last thing you get is an explorer's pack and 4 of javelins. So unlike most of the other classes, you're not looking at getting a sling, a crossbow, or a bow as one of your starting equipments, leading to the implication that they don't tend to stick to the ranged fighting very much. They'll attack it ranged if they have to, but it's generally while closing the distance. So now we take a look into the meat and potatoes of what makes a barbarian. And I scrolled up way too high. There we go. The First thing here you see is rage. Rage is the core mechanic of a barbarian. It is what makes a barbarian a barbarian. As you can see here, in the battle, you fight with primal ferocity. On your turn, you can enter rage as a bonus action. While raging, you gain a number of benefits. The first thing, you gain advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. Pretty much push, pull, lift, drag, grapple, all of these things, they get a bonus because you're raging. Whenever you make a melee weapon attack using strength, meaning not a ranged weapon, you gain bonus damage, which increases as you level up as a barbarian. You'll see this on the when you're looking in the player's handbook. You'll see a chart of that. It starts as 2, and I think it ends as 6. So you automatically get +2 to your damage while you're raging, starting at level 1, which is really nice because it increases the minimum damage that you're going to do automatically. So it's almost impossible to do 1 damage. And then you have one of the pièce de résistance here, resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. So pretty much most of the melee damage that's going to be done to you is cut in half while you're raging. That is significant. Another thing that makes barbarians very hard to kill. And then you'll see the note down there that leads to what I was saying earlier. Barbarians don't really mix well with casting classes because if you're raging, you cannot cast a spell and you cannot concentrate on a spell. So if you cross-classed into something like a wizard and you threw out wall of fire to block off some creatures and then raged, your wall of fire would immediately drop. The rest of the mechanics here, your rage lasts for a minute. That's 10 rounds of combat. The average combat lasts 3 to 4 rounds if you're using the approach that the books give you. So you're going to be raging through your entire combat more often than not. You can, however, lose your rage if you're knocked unconscious or if your turn ends and you have not attacked a hostile creature or taken damage, and that's where that crowd control comes into play. If you get caught up by entangling roots and you can't approach an enemy to attack and the creatures leave you alone, your rage is lost and you'll have to use another one. And rage has a limited number of uses, as is noted by the next line. It starts at 2, and I think you get 4 or 6 by the time you're level 20. So there are some serious hindrances if your opponents know how to keep a barbarian out of combat. Now comes the fun one here, and that is unarmored defense. Unarmored defense is an interesting feature. You'll see that in a couple other classes, and it is important to note that it uses dexterity. So while strength and constitution are the most important stats, if you choose to go unarmored, you'll need a decent dexterity modifier. And this is important because you can take a look, and as I said, light and medium armor are accessible to your barbarian. Medium armor tends to have a maximum of a +2 dexterity bonus. So if your dexterity is +2, it adds +2 to your final armor class. You'll have to take a peek and see what's going to work best for you. Yes and no, Gangris. Dexterity happens to be one of the most versatile stats in 5th edition. It's used to increase armor class. It's used to increase the hit and damage of many of your ranged weapons. It affects a number of important skills that you have access to, and it is one of the most important saving throw stats for damage dealing spells. So unnecessary, not really, but in the long run, dexterity is usually your third stat when looking into a barbarian. Exactly, and I mean that's exactly my point, Axel. Fireball, one of the most common third level spells purchased, requires a dexterity saving throw. That's 8d6 fire damage. While you're raging, unless you have a specific build, if your dex isn't high enough, you'll take the full brunt of that damage. So yeah, it's not necessarily an unnecessary risk, but it is a calculated risk in this situation. So looking at your AC, looking at unarmored defense, and looking at whether you want that or armor, you got to play around with which way you want to go with it. Reckless attack. This is one that tends to be misunderstood quite a bit for barbarians when they first start out, and it has a side effect that is missed quite often by DMs. This one is a very risky thing to use, but has a nice payout at the same time. Using reckless attack, you can roll with advantage on your melee weapon attacks that turn. So if you've got 2 attacks that turn, you can roll with advantage on both. However, that gives all creatures that attack you advantage until your turn starts again. So the risk is all creatures getting advantage on you. The reward is you have advantage, which increases your chances of getting that nat 20, of getting that hit against a creature that's been very difficult to take down. The good news is most of your melee attacks are going to be slashing, bludgeoning, or piercing. So if you're raging and you use reckless attack and they still hit you, you're most likely going to take half damage. So a risk and reward on this one, very useful. But as a player, when you use reckless attack, it's for all of your melee attacks that turn, including the second attack on your extra attack or your offhand attack if you choose to use one. You still get reckless attack. DMs, remember, you have advantage if your barbarian rolls recklessly. Very important. Now, something else for you, Gangris, towards your unnecessary risk question for dexterity. Danger sense. You have an uncanny sense of knowing something's not right. If you have to make a dexterity throw against an effect that you can see, you get advantage. So somebody casts that fireball, you can see it, your danger sense triggers, you roll with advantage. So that's where that calculated risk on dexterity comes into play. The caveat to this, though, if you're blind, deaf, or incapacitated, you don't get advantage. Kind of makes sense, though. If you can't see it, you can't hear it, and you can't move, you're not going to be able to be very dexterous. Wow, my tongue is tied today. The next piece to a barbarian is your primal path. Primal path is what you choose as the subclass of your barbarian. It's what makes your barbarian unique. Do you choose? And there's, I want to say 7 or 8 different subclasses. Each primal path has unique abilities, and taking a look at all of them you should almost always find one that fits the play style you want to go with. I will be covering them in depth in a little while here. There is a lot to cover. Ability score improvement. This is something that everybody gets once you reach fourth. Reach fourth level, you can choose to increase an ability score or choose a feat. The rate at which you gain your ability score improvements changes based on your class. For Barbarian, it's 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th, giving you 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 extra 10 extra stat points that you can allocate as need be. In 5th edition, however, you cannot use an ability score improvement to go above a 20 in any given stat. Exceptions do exist, but they're very few and far between. Then we have extra attack. At 5th level, you can attack twice instead of once when you take your attack action, which means Barbarian do more damage. Rolling to hit twice, rolling recklessly to attack twice, that gives you 4 dice rolls to hit that nat 20 and make massive damage. Many of your melee classes get that extra attack at 5th level. Very, very handy. And then Barbarians are one of 2 classes, if my memory serves correctly, that get fast movement, a speed increase of 10 feet starting at 5th level. Extremely helpful for my Barbarian Utgar. He was a dwarf. He had 25 feet movement. Once he hit 5th level, he had 35-foot movement, which means he could keep up with the rest of the party now. For other races, and even for the slower races like dwarves and halflings, that extra mobility is extremely handy in combat, being able to go from one creature to the next and getting in and out of combat as you need. Feral Instinct. This one is extremely handy for these damage-dealing brutes. You get advantage on your initiative rolls. Initiative is figured by the bonus you get from your dexterity. So if you have +2 to dexterity, that means you roll 1d20 plus 2. Having advantage gives you the chance to increase how quickly you respond to combat. Extremely handy to have that initiative. Another reason why dexterity is a tertiary stat, and you don't necessarily have to drop a lot into it if you don't want to. 9th level and 13th level both give you brutal critical. It adds a die whenever you make a critical hit. So if you're using that great axe, it has, if my memory serves correctly, 2d6 damage. Now, if you critically hit, it does 3d6 damage. And then when you hit 13th level, it does 4d6 damage. Really nice for creating that massive damage. Now at 11th level, this is where rage starts to get very bothersome for the DM. Starting at 11th level, if you drop to 0 hit points while you're raging, you do not die outright. You can roll a Constitution saving throw, which happens to be one of your main stats, and if you succeed beating a DC 10, you stay at 1 hit point. So if you have 20 hit points and the creature does 36 damage to you, you roll a Constitution saving throw, beat that 10, you have 1 hit point. However, that challenge, that DC, that difficulty challenge, increases by 5 every time you use it until you take a rest. So hopefully you take that creature down before he tries to kill you a second time, or third time, or fourth time. Depends on how good your rolls are. Relentless Rage really starts making things tricksy for the DM in trying to bring that barbarian down. It already takes half damage from a lot of the attacks, and now you can't kill it if he makes the saving throw. 15th level, yes, very much like zombies and very much like the half-orc. Half-orc only gets to do it once. Zombies get to do it more often, I believe. I think it's called Undead Resilience or something like that. Let me grab my book. No, it's not there. It's down here. And then you go too far. Zombies. Undead Fortitude. If it's reduced to 0 hit points, make a con DC. Yep, identical to zombies. And yes, unless it's radiant. All right. Now, the next thing that makes barbarians even more annoying to kill is persistent rage. At 15th level, your rage is so fierce that the only time it drops is if you fall unconscious or you choose to end it. So that crowd control, where you keep them out of combat and they lose rage, doesn't happen anymore. Now you have to find some way of making them fall asleep, fall unconscious, something like that, so that they're not able to rage. What is up, Dustin? How are you tonight? You have come in at about 1/3 of the way of covering barbarians. I am doing a 14-week-long journey through the different classes in D&D 5th edition. Barbarian. So yeah, 15th level, that's when barbarians really start to become annoying. 17th level, we get another critical die. So now they're doing 3 extra dice whenever they critically hit. Lots and lots of damage. And then Indomitable Might. If your total strength check is less than your strength score, you can use your strength score in place of the total. So basically, anytime you do something that is a feat of strength, your minimum roll is your strength, and by 17th level, it should be 20. So that means your minimum strength roll is a 20. Barbarians are annoying if you have any type of strength feat to go at them. All right. If you hideous laughter at 15th level barbarian, they will just roll around on the floor angry AF and laughing like Jack the Ripper. Yes. Yes. That is absolutely correct. I mean, all I can think of now is Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk with laughing gas. And the last thing here, Primal Champion, the capstone ability of a barbarian. This is that exception to stat scores. As soon as you hit level 20, your strength and constitution score increase to 24. And your maximum is now 24 rather than that 20 that would normally be there. Which makes Indomitable Might even more annoying because now your minimum strength roll is 24. It also increases your hit points by a lot, and it increases your damage and to hit by a lot. So pretty neat ability. So that's a brief overview of all of the different mechanics that go into a barbarian. We will come back to those in a little bit, because the big thing here that we get to take a look at is, how do you build a barbarian? And as I have here, building a barbarian in some respects can be fairly straightforward. We already know that strength and constitution are the primary attributes. So we would be just fine in putting the high numbers in both and still have a good character. However, looking at your primal paths, it can impact your decisions on prioritizing your attributes. It's worth noting that dexterity can help your armor class if you find yourself unarmored or prefer to be unarmored. So before we begin talking too much about building the Barbarian, we're going to look at the primal paths and see what they have to offer. And as I said at the beginning of the stream, I will not be covering anything from UA, Unearthed Arcana, as it is considered playtest material until it's published in a source book. I'm only going over what's in source book material that you can pick up at your local gaming store. So we're going to start this off. And there will be a break in here in about a half an hour. So we'll see how much we can cover before we go to break. Going alphabetically here. The first path we have is Path of the Ancestral Guardian. Briefly, this is a barbarian who draws their strength from ancestral guardians for power and protection. They often are found covering themselves with intricate tattoos. Folsham Art, how do you do? Yes, lots of RP potential there. It is also one of the classes that, as I mentioned earlier when taking a look at the roleplay side of it, this is one of those barbarians that may not be completely rage driven. Maybe their driving emotion is righteousness, pride, something like that. Or you can describe it in a completely different way and say that the ancestors have taken over the body and they're the ones that are driving that barbaric nature. So yeah, lots of RP potential there. So the first thing that we look at here, ancestral protectors. Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, spectral warriors appear when you enter your rage. While you're raging, the first creature you hit with an attack on your turn becomes the target of the warriors, which hinder the attacks. Until the start of your next turn, that target has disadvantage on any attack roll that is not against you. And when the target hits a creature other than you with that attack, that creature has resistance to the damage dealt by the attack. So not only does a creature attacking an ally have disadvantage, but the ally has resistance and takes half damage from a successful attack. The effect on the target of ancestral protectors ends early if your rage ends, bringing us back to that crowd control and incapacitating a barbarian. Very useful ability. The next one here, Spirit Shield. Beginning at 6th level, guardian spirits that aid you can provide supernatural protection to those you defend, i.e. your allies. If you're raging and another creature you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to reduce that damage by 2d6, and that amount goes up at 10th level and 14th level. So now, depending on how you play things out, if you use ancestral protectors and you decide to guard the squishy wizard, the wizard has resistance to damage taken onto it. There's disadvantage on attacks towards the squishy wizard. And if they do get hit, you can reduce the damage by 2d6. It's a very powerful protection style subclass. The next feature is Consult the Spirits. You gain the ability to consult with your spirits. When you do so, you can cast Augury or Clairvoyance without using a spell slot or material components. You're squishy. There's no other way about it. You're squishy. Rather than creating a spherical sensor in the sense of the Clairvoyance spell, it instead looks like one of the spirit ancestors, and that spirit ancestor appears at the location that you designate. And this is one of those subclasses that uses a stat that is not primary. You can use wisdom, or it uses wisdom for the spellcasting ability. Gangris, out of curiosity, is rage declared Or is that a straight mechanic of the character where the game dictates? Okay, rage is something that is used on the barbarian's turn as a bonus action, and you declare it. So if it's outside of your turn and you are not raging, then you could not use the shield ability because you're not raging and it's not available. The last ability, the last feature that you gain from the Ancestral Guardian is your capstone ability. Your ancestral spirits grow powerful enough to retaliate. When you use Spirit Shield to reduce damage of an attack, the attacker takes an amount of force damage equal to the damage that you prevented using Spirit Shield. So it reflects the damage back at the attacker too. Very, very interesting subclass to play. Very interesting path to play. And here are some of my thoughts on that. One, it's a great protector role or tank role. If your purpose that you choose when you're making this character is to make sure your party doesn't die, guard them from everything, that's this path. Huge on protection. Taking a look at each of the different things here, ancestral protectors. Giving creatures disadvantage is huge when dealing with large groups or a particularly strong boss monster, and reducing the damage by half. That's enormous. It's the difference between a party wipe or just a really annoying combat. Spirit Shield, again, massive boon. It reduces damage. It takes the load off your healers. It makes it so you don't need to use your healing potion as often. The hard part, though, is knowing when to use it. It's a limited resource. A reaction can only be done once until your turn comes around again. So more often than not, you're going to see that this is used to stop a killing blow rather than just throwing it out willy-nilly. You got to be careful when you use it, as if they take 12 damage, you reduce it by 8, and the next party member takes 26 damage, you timed it wrong, potentially. So Spirit Shield is kind of tricksy that way. Consult the Spirit, very situational. There are certain modules and game styles where it can be useful, but many times you're going to find that it's an overlooked part of your toolkit, because a lot of people are doing dungeon crawls and combat heavy games. Augury and clairvoyance, they're really useful in games that require understanding what you're doing. For parties that like to research before they dive in headfirst swinging their weapons, that's when they come in handy. If you're playing a mystery type storyline where you have to find information out, they can be useful. But if you're doing a dungeon crawl and the whole purpose is to kill as many things as you want and loot as much as you can, this isn't going to be very helpful. And the capstone, Vengeful Ancestors. It's an interesting ability. Reflecting damage, or free damage in a manner of speaking, is always nice. But again, it has the same limitation because it's triggered off of Spirit Shield. When do you use it? Overall, I really do like the Path of the Ancestor as a tank build. Fantastic. And it allows for you guys as players to take on bigger challenges than you thought you would normally be able to, and walk away. It allows a little bit more freedom to the DM as well to throw challenges that they normally wouldn't, because your party may survive them a lot easier. Kind of fun in both directions. The next one is one that I just started to get familiar with. For those people who love to play dwarves, there is a specific path for the dwarven barbarian. Originally, I was going to go path of the totem, but I saw Path of the Battle Rager and went, "Ooh, this is fun." Battle Ragers are a dwarf-only path. It's not available to any other race, unless, of course, your DM allows it. They're followers of the gods of war, Moradin being one of them. And they specialize in wearing this heavy, bulky, spiked armor. They're a walking metallic hedgehog. And they quite literally throw themselves into combat, striking with their body itself and giving themselves over to the fury and fun of battle. The first thing to note is when you choose the Path of the Battle Rager, you have access to spiked armor as a weapon. I did not put the stats on here. You'll find those in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. Those stats will be in the book that you can write down. The big piece about it, though, is while you're wearing this armor, you can use your bonus action to actually melee attack with your armor spikes. You literally throw yourself at your opponent. If the attack hits, you deal 1d4 piercing damage. Now remember, if you reckless attack, you can recklessly attack with your body and hit him with these spikes. It uses a strength modifier for attack roll and damage rolls. So if you have a +4 to strength, that's 1d4 plus 4 piercing damage by throwing yourself at an opponent. Additionally, though, you can make a grapple check. And as one would expect, if you're a walking Iron Maiden, if you succeed on that grapple check, you automatically deal 3 piercing damage to the opponent you grapple with. Very fun perk to this path. We then take a look at the next couple of abilities here. Reckless Abandon at 6th level. When you recklessly attack while raging, you also gain temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier, minimum of 1. They then vanish if any of them are left when your rage drops. So if you take a look at the level 15 feature where your rage doesn't drop until you're unconscious, well, now you have temporary hit points that entire time. Then we have Battle Charger. You can take the dash action as a bonus action while you are raging. Mobility. Granted, it replaces being able to throw your body at people and spear them with your armor, but it does give you more movement. Lastly, Spiked Retribution. When a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, the attacker automatically takes 3 piercing damage if you're raging and not incapacitated while wearing the armor. Really fun. So we take a look at this, and again, a little bit of my thoughts on this one. This is a great niche path, helping make dwarves feel unique when they are a barbarian. There is nothing that makes this a go-to choice, but it's definitely cut out for someone who wants to be more of a damage dealer. It's just a fun path. Battle Rager armor. Special armor that doubles as a weapon. Always nice to be able to do more damage. The minimum 1d4 plus strength makes it so that it will not outpace other classes, but gives you a bit more versatility in your attacks as a bonus action. You can definitely do more damage with an offhand weapon attack. 1d6, 1d8 damage. But if you're wielding a shield and a weapon, then this gives you something that you can do with your bonus action. Reckless Abandon. Really nice feature, making reckless attack a bit less risky. The temporary hit points take the sting out of giving your opponents advantage on their next attacks. If you got a +5 to your con, an extra 5 temporary hit points, it takes a little chunk out of the damage that you would have normally taken. Really nice. And then spiked retribution. As a capstone feature, it is kind of lackluster. 3 damage doesn't mean much when the creatures, by that point in time, have triple-digit hit point pools plus multi-attack. If they hit you 3 times, and each of those hits are 24 damage apiece, you did 12 damage to them and took 36. Not a very even trade, kind of lackluster. It's even more unappealing when it requires wearing the spiked armor, which at later levels may be a hindrance to your armor class. If the spiked armor doesn't scale as you increase in levels, you may find that wearing that armor doesn't give you as much as going unarmored or grabbing a magical piece of armor that you found somewhere while dungeon delving. So yeah, it's a little bit of a lackluster capstone ability, but it is kind of neat. And then one of the first paths in the player's handbook, we have the Path of the Berserker. The Barbarian enters a Berserker's Rage. It's like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, hey, look, I'm going to fight a dragon. I'm going to take off my hedgehog armor because I'll live longer. Wait a minute. We're going to fight a beholder. Why is the barbarian stripping? Because he wants to live. So, Path of the Berserker. It is one of the ones you'll find in the player's handbook. They go crazy. Heedless of their own health or well-being, they charge into battle, swinging their weapon with reckless abandon. As you can see with their first ability, Frenzy. You go into a frenzy while raging. If you do so for the duration of your rage, you can make a single melee attack as a bonus action on each of your turns after this one. When your rage ends, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. Pro and a con. It can be extremely useful, especially seeing as swinging with an offhand weapon normally isn't as strong as a normal attack. Then we have Mindless Rage. This one, if you remember some of my Achilles heel references, this one's neat. Mindless Rage. Beginning at 6th level, you cannot be charmed or frightened while raging. If you are charmed or frightened and then you enter rage, the effect is suspended for the duration of rage. It is not dispelled. Very important. Then we have Intimidating Presence. Beginning at level 10, you can use your action to frighten someone with your menacing presence. When you do so, I see a Miss Fatal Pillow. Hello, little lady. How are you today? When you choose to use this, you pick a creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. If the creature can see or hear you, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. DC is 8 plus your proficiency plus your charisma. This is another one of those abilities that uses an off stat. If they fail, they will be frightened of you until the end of your next turn. On subsequent turns, you can use your action to extend the duration of this effect on the frightened creature until the end of your next turn. The effect ends if the creature ends its turn out of line of sight or is more than 60 feet away from you. If the creature succeeds its saving throw, you cannot use this feature on that creature again for 24 hours. You know, I agree. If the bard has to take his armor off, he needs the right music. And then the capstone ability. Starting at 14th level, when you take damage from a creature that's within 5 feet of you, you can choose to use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the creature. 1 more attack to your toolbox. Now looking at this, the path is all about dealing damage, as much damage as possible. For players that want to wade through combat like a lawnmower, this is the way to go. Make your weapon attacks. Use your bonus action to make a weapon attack. And creature hits you, make another weapon attack. You're swinging that weapon anywhere from, I think it's like 4 to 5 times a turn. It's pretty crazy. And then you can do it all at advantage too if you do reckless. So Frenzy has a huge risk-reward decision at lower levels. It makes it hard to choose when you want to implement it. The bonus action swing will be at full damage, unlike doing an offhand attack. Offhand attacks does weapon damage only. You do not add your strength modifier to it. If you're using Frenzy, you will add your strength modifier to it. It does more damage. But this is at the expense of 1 exhaustion. At your first level of exhaustion, you start taking disadvantage on saving throws. Then your speed is reduced in half. And if you use it too many times, it can literally kill you. At later levels, 3 attacks on a turn can be significant. But at lower levels, it may not be worth it. So this is one of those risk-reward things. Is it really worth that exhaustion to get those extra attacks? Is this battle that difficult? Then we take a look at Mindless Rage. Immune to Charm and Frightened. Heck yeah. Being able to negate, and that's actually a mistake on my part. It is not negate. Prevent. Got to make sure you use the right word. Or suspend. Something from removing you from battle is always a good thing. Again, if you're frightened, you use rage, it will suspend that frightened condition. The reason suspend is important is if that frightened condition lasts longer than a minute, when your rage ends, you will be frightened again. So very important to pay attention to that wording. But I rage. I'm no longer frightened. I beat the tar out of this creature. My rage ends. The creature's dead. I don't have anything to be frightened of. So there is that too. Intimidating Presence. This feature does not look like it's very good at first. However, it has some big implications when used properly. Being able to give a big bad the frightened condition with the ability to maintain it can seriously impact how dangerous the fight gets. So, yes, you are taking yourself out of combat because it uses your action to use Intimidating Presence. However, when a creature is frightened, it has some pretty significant debuffs. And because I don't always have this condition, I haven't memorized it yet. Bad DM. There it is. So while the creature is frightened, it has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of its fear is within line of sight. The creature can also not move closer to the source of its fear willingly. So as an action, for as long as you can make this intimidating presence last, the creature has disadvantage on its attack throws, and if you choose to step closer to the creature, it's going to move back. So you can literally cow a creature into a corner, and yeah, very, very interesting implications in combat strategy. Even more reason to be a speedy dwarf, that's right. But it does have that downfall of taking you out of combat. Risk reward, got to figure out if it's worth it. Lastly, retaliation. It's one of the more useful capstone abilities in all of the barbarian paths. You have a reaction to attack a creature that damaged you. rather than waiting for it to leave your range of combat. It hits you, you hit it back. That's pretty potent. And you don't need a feat for it. There is a feat that allows you to do that. So, pretty potent. And as I said, the Berserker class is all about causing damage. And then we get into one of the more, this is one of those paths that has a lot of decision making. And figuring out if it's worth your while, if something is worth using, which one's better, which one's worse. It's a lot of thinking goes into this one. You usually want to plan ahead with this. And this is the path of the Storm Herald. Barbarians who follow the path of the Storm Herald learn to transform that rage into a mantle of primal magic, which swirls around them, tapping into the force of nature. I had one player use this class, and it's kind of neat. So, beginning at 3rd level, you emanate a stormy magical aura while you rage. The aura extends 10 feet out from you in every direction, but not through total cover. So it is stopped by walls or trees or things like that. The aura has an effect that activates when you enter your rage. So it's an automatic thing. You can activate the effect again on each of your turns as a bonus action, which is nice because that means you can still attack with your weapon. And your choices are desert, sea, or tundra. Your aura's effect depends on which environment you choose, and we'll go through those as we scroll down. You can change your environment whenever you gain a level in this class. Very important note. If the aura's effect requires a saving throw, the DC equals 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your constitution modifier, which is nice. That means you don't have to worry about a 3rd stat. Now looking at this, I'm going to go over these pretty quick because I do a bit of a breakdown at the end that will give you some of my thoughts on that. So the 3 different places you can choose from are desert, sea, and tundra. If you choose desert, when the effect is activated, all other creatures in your area take 2 fire damage each. The damage increases as you level up, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 20th level. Sea. When you activate the effect, you can choose one other creature that you can see in your aura. The target must make a dexterity saving throw. The target takes 1d6 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Again, this scales as you level up, doing more damage. Last one here is tundra. When the effect is activated, each creature of your choice in your aura gains 2 temporary hit points, and again it increases as you level up. So as you can see already, there are decisions to make and how it affects your gameplay and party composition. The next feature is Storm Soul. At 6th level, the storm grants you benefits even when your aura is not active. The benefits are based on the environment you choose. So we have desert. You gain resistance to fire damage, and you don't suffer the effects of extreme heat, as described in the DMG. Moreover, as an action, you can touch a flammable object that is not being worn or carried and set it on fire, which is pretty fun. At sea, you gain resistance to lightning, you can breathe underwater, and you have a swimming speed of 30, which is pretty cool because normally when you're underwater trying to move about, you move at half speed, which is 15 feet. Then we have tundra. You gain resistance to cold. You do not suffer the effects of extreme cold, as described in the DMG. And as an action, you can touch water and turn it into a 5-foot cube of ice, which melts after a minute. The action does not work if there's a creature in the cube, so no turning mermaids into ice sculptures. Then we have Shielding Storm. You learn to use the storm to protect others. Each creature of your choice has the damage resistance that you gained while they're within the aura. And lastly, Raging Storm. The power of the storm you channel grows mightier, lashing out at your foes. The effect is based on the environment you choose for your aura. Immediately after a creature in your aura hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to force that creature to make a dex saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes fire damage equal to half your barbarian level. That would be desert. For C, when you hit a creature with your aura with an attack within your aura with an attack, you can use your reaction to force that creature to make a strength saving throw. If they fail, they're knocked prone. And then for Tundra, whenever the effect of your storm is activated, you can choose one creature you see in the aura. That creature must succeed on a strength saving throw, or its speed is reduced to 0 until the start of your next turn. So all of them have some pretty interesting effects. So first things first, though, this is a really good support path for the party. The different effects can help the party while simultaneously hindering enemies. The ability to switch the aura when you level up also gives you the ability to find which one best suits your party makeup. Now the thing to understand is you cannot mix and match the auras per level. If you choose desert, it's all desert, which is an important thing to understand. This is so looking at storm aura, desert comes with a risk. All creatures are affected by it when taking that damage. So if your party is within that 10-foot aura, they're going to take that damage. However, it is it is a bonus action, so it's free damage. Really, really helpful. C is great for singling out a target and dealing with it, whether it's to save an ally or put more hurt on the one you're attacking. Being able to target a creature makes it really nice. And then Tundra is really useful for helping your party survive difficult situations. Extra hit points means harder to kill. Storm Soul, fairly situational. Resistance to a particular damage type, always nice. It's what else they give you that you have to figure out if you want them. Increased moving speed and breathing underwater. Not going to be very useful if you're landlocked. Resistance to cold and go back up here because brain is shorting out. Too far. Resistance to cold and making water into ice cubes. Doesn't sound like it's very useful unless, again, you have time near water. And if you're never in an extreme cold environment, then the other ability doesn't work. Same with desert. If you're in a game where you don't have to worry about extreme heat, it's a moot point. Setting things on fire with your finger could be interesting, but it doesn't cause damage, so it doesn't have an attack application. Burn down a door that's locked? Cool. Have a gelatinous cube in front of you? Doesn't do you any good. Shielding Storm, granting the resistance to the rest of your party, always nice. Anything to help the party is good. And it's passive. You don't have to do anything. But the fact that 2 of your features that you gain don't really impact combat stuff can be a little bit off-putting. But if you're in an RP heavy game and not a dungeon crawl, shouldn't matter. Raging Storm, a capstone that is a coin flip. Depending on the situation, it can turn an encounter on its head, or it can be completely useless. I mean, being able to shoot fireballs back at a creature after it hits you is great, but if the creature is immune to fire, it doesn't help you. Being able to reduce the speed of a creature to 0, pretty cool, but strength is generally a high stat on many creatures, so it's possible that it could be saved at later levels and not be very effective. Knocking a creature prone, always helpful because it gives advantage to your party, but again, it's a strength saving throw, and at higher levels it may not be as applicable as you'd like. But you're also looking at the fact that you're going to have a decently high DC on it at 14th level. So it is a coin flip. Sometimes it'll be really useful. Sometimes it just will not work. So Path of the Storm, pretty cool. Has some really interesting RP. Has some interesting mechanics as a support class. Not one that I've had the chance to see played very far, but it looks like a good support class. And with that, I am going to take a break here real quick, grab something to munch on, give love to the wife, and wet my whistle. I will be back, and the good news is we're pretty much done with the paths, and we can start talking about how to build the Barbarian and see if there's any questions out there in viewerland. So I will be back in just a little bit, and see you after break.
What is hero approved?
I'm Turkey from the Grouch Couch.
Hi, I'm the Lich.
I'm DM Taco from Dragons in the Dining Room.
My name is Pookie Sprinkles.
I'm Dungeons and Dom. I'm Jeff Folsham of Folsham Art.
Hero Approved is a stream team full of streamers dedicated to their craft and community. They strive to push the boundaries of what is possible for live streaming. Collaborations every week.
For the IC. That right.
Metal detector. Pushing each other to make the best possible content. Check out the Hero Approved.
look at this. I have a whole bunch of friends who came in. Reppenwolf, thank you very, very much for the raid. For those of you who are not aware, Reppenwolf happens to be a real-life friend of mine who streams pretty much every day of the week. You can catch him over on his channel doing video games. If I remember correct, I think he just wrapped up Alan Wake. He also happens to be a DM on Dragons in the Dining Room every other Wednesday, running a homebrew campaign based in a central location from the Ravnica sourcebook. So do give him a look-see when you guys get a chance. He's quite talkative on his streams too, so you'll never be bored. We happen to be going over the Barbarian today. We're about halfway through, maybe a little bit further, about what is a barbarian. And it just so happens that I am starting back up with Reppenwolf's favorite barbarian build, Path of the Totem Warrior. His character in my Saturday game, Lorimir, happens to be a Path of the Totem Warrior by the name of Mirren, a character he's played with us for about 5 years. Granted, he's becoming more of a god than a barbarian totem warrior, but that's storyline and everything else. Looking at Path of the Totem Warrior, by the way, all of you new people who just popped in, if you have questions, if you have comments, whatever you want, feel free. This is a just chatting /info/help stream. So feel free to ask questions as time goes on. I have no problem backtracking if need be. I'm just covering all of this stuff and giving some rundowns. If you guys want to catch any of this from the beginning to the end, this will be posted on YouTube, as well as you can hit the VOD here. What class should you play? Well, you did pretty darn good with the dwarf in DCC. You could get away with a mastermind fighter pretty easily. But my answer to people, I'm gonna digress and tangent into that real quick. My answer to people that say, what class should I play, starts with the question, what do you want to do in your party? What role do you want to fulfill? Axel might be biased just a little bit. If you can find an answer to that question, what is it? What role do I want to play? The next question is, or the next thought process is, find an analogy, whether it be from video games, movies, books, whatever the case may be. Find something that's an analogy to that, so you can say, I want to be a kick-ass ranged fighter, like who's also really good at close combat, like John Wick. Oh my God, I cannot believe we were on the same page, Gangris. That is too awesome. So yeah, you think John Wick. Well, there's a couple different classes that could play it, but the one that in my mind fits closest is a ranger. They have really good stats when it comes to melee combat and ranged combat. With dual hand, I thought about doing that, Reppin. I think that would be so much fun. I only have one question though. Do you reload them two-handed, or do you set one down, reload, pick the other one up, reload? It just doesn't have the same cinematic effect as doing the Yes, I have to figure out how to invent a hand crossbow autoloader. But That's actually something they don't have in 5th edition that they used to have that they have in 3.5. They do not have the repeating crossbow. So, yeah, interesting. So, going back to where we were, Path of the Totem Warrior. This one I'm intimately familiar with, and uh, they would be improvised weapons. So your attack would be done with those rules in play. That's the wrong book. Oh well. Yeah, it would be an improvised weapon. I forget the rules right off the top of my head, but I think it's 1d4 damage, and you do not add proficiency modifier to it when you roll to hit. And pretty much anything can be an improvised weapon. Is it 1? I know that a melee attack, if you punch somebody, it's 1 damage plus strength. Now I gotta look into this. An object that bears no resemblance to a weapon deals 1d4 damage. The rules say that an improvised weapon does 1d4. Tavern Brawler, I know that that gives you something special. I think that changes your melee attacks to 1d4. Yeah, Tavern Brawler increases your strength or con by 1 to a maximum of 20. You are proficient with all improvised weapons, which means you now add your proficiency to the hit. Your unarmed strikes jump to 1d4. I was starting to second guess myself there, Folsham. But as you guys can see, please feel free, talk. I love this stuff because it makes me try and remember all this good stuff. Navi, hey, listen. Hey, listen. I can completely understand that, Folsham. I spend my day talking on phones, and then I spend 3 hours on Mondays talking with you guys. My brain is pudding and my tongue is tied. Cool. Storm Heralds are neat. So yes, Path of the Totem Warrior. The barbarian accepts a spirit animal as a guide, protector, or inspiration. In battle, your totem spirit fills you with supernatural might, adding magical fuel to your barbarian rage. Nope, it's tapioca. I'm not coming after it. The first thing you get from a Path of the Totem Warrior is Spirit Seeker. Yours is a path that seeks attunement with the natural world, giving you a kinship with beasts. At 3rd level, when you adopt this path, you gain the ability to cast the beast sense and speak with animals spells, but only as rituals. I prefer butterscotch pudding. Then you have Totem Spirit. Big thing to note, it is a ritual, which means it does not require a spell slot. But you do need the components. Totem Spirit. At 3rd level, when you adopt this path, you choose a Totem Spirit and gain its feature. You must make or acquire a physical totem object, an amulet or other adornment that incorporates fur, feathers, claw, teeth, etc. of the totem animal. At your option, you also gain a minor physical attribute that are reminiscent of your totem spirit. For example, if you have a bear totem, you might be unusually hairy and thick-skinned, or if your totem is an eagle, your eyes turn to a bright yellow. For Mirren, we gave him a wolf's tail. Now, at 3rd level, You also have to figure out which animal your totem is. And there are quite a few. I actually just recently learned this one, that there are 5. 3 in the player's handbook and 2 in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. So that shocked me, and I was actually kind of impressed. When you take a look at this, each of your totemic animals give you a different type of perk. Bear, while raging, you have resistance to all damage except for psychic damage, which means all of the elemental damages plus the slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning. The spirit of the bear makes you tough enough to stand up to any punishment, except for punishment of the mind. Eagle, while you're raging, other creatures have disadvantage on opportunity attack rolls against you, and you can use the dash action as a bonus action on your turn. The spirit of the eagle makes you into a predator who can weave through the fray with ease. Disadvantage is always a fun thing. Elk, while you are raging and are not wearing heavy armor, your walk speed increases by 15 feet. The spirit of the elk makes you extraordinarily swift. Now that speed increase does also add into the speed increase from your 5th level Barbarian. So you essentially gain 25 feet of movement, or a total of 25 feet of movement while raging. And then we have Tiger. While raging, you can add 10 feet to your long jump distance and 3 feet to your high jump distance. Lastly, Wolf. While you're raging, your friends have advantage on melee attack rolls against any creature within 5 feet of you that is hostile. For those of you who might recognize it, this is the same thing as pack tactics. At level 6, you get to choose another totem animal, or the same one. Does not matter. If you choose bear, your carrying capacity, including your maximum load and maximum lift, which is important to people who do all of the bookkeeping for how much can I carry, how much weight do we have. Very important. It is doubled. You also have advantage on strength checks made to push, pull, lift, or break objects. This is outside of raging, because you already get advantage on strength checks while raging. This advantage is while you are not raging. Eagle. You gain the eyesight of an eagle. You can see up to 1 mile away with no difficulty, able to discern even fine details as though looking at something no more than 100 feet from you. Additionally, dim light does not impose advantage on your perception checks. I'm going to make a minor caveat here. All of the 6th level ones are outside. Well, all of the 6th level ones do not require you to be raging. Being able to see and having the equivalent of 3/5 low light vision as an eagle. Then we have elk. Whether mounted or on foot, your travel pace is doubled, which is insane if you think about it. As is the travel pace of up to 10 companions while they're within 60 feet of you and you are not incapacitated. That is insane movement. We then have Tiger. You gain proficiency in 2 skills from athletics, acrobatics, stealth, and survival. Lastly, again, we have Wolf. You gain the hunting sensibilities of a wolf. You can track other creatures while traveling at fast pace. You can move stealthily while traveling at normal pace. Both rather nice little features. At level 10, you get to choose another totem animal or the same one. Again, you can, at each of these levels, you can choose any totemic animal. It does not have to be the same one each time. First one on the list is bear. While you're raging, any creature within 5 feet of you that is hostile to you has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you or another character with this feature. And that's very important. If you have 2 totem barbarians in your party and they're both level 14, this doesn't overlap. It excludes them from each other. An enemy is immune to the effect if it cannot see or hear the barbarian or if it cannot be frightened. Also very important. Eagle. While raging, you have a fly speed equal to your current walking speed. Again, pretty nifty. The benefit works only in short bursts. You fall if you end your turn in the air and nothing else is holding you aloft. So important note on that one. Elk. While raging, you can use a bonus action during your move to pass through the space of a large or smaller creature. That creature must succeed on a strength saving throw or be knocked prone and take bludgeoning damage equal to 1d12 plus strength. You can move through pretty much any creature's space, and if you do, you knock them prone and do damage. Neat. Tiger. While you're raging, if you move at least 20 feet in a straight line toward a large or smaller target right before making your melee weapon attack, you can use a bonus action to take an additional attack at it. So it's kind of like a charging attack, slightly different. Wolf. While you're raging, you can use a bonus action on your turn to knock a large or smaller creature prone when you hit it with a melee weapon attack, similar to the takedown ability of the wolf creature. Now this one I've got a lot of writing behind, so bear with me here. This path has the most to offer when customizing your character to any playstyle. The ability to help both yourself and your party by mixing and matching totems makes this path useful in any party composition. The fact that unlike Storm Herald, where if you choose desert, everything is desert, you can mix and match your animals. Mirren is wolf and eagle. I'm not sure what he's choosing for his third. So it's really easy to customize your barbarian to match play style and party composition. The first ability that you get, Spirit Seeker. Beast Sense and Speak with Animal. They're useful in wilderness adventures, but they don't have much for combat utility. These are great for role play games, exploration style games, wilderness games, things like that. Being that they're rituals, however, you can't really use them on the fly. It has to be a dedicated action, as it takes 10 minutes minimum to cast a ritual. So very much a story ability, not a combat ability. The next one is Totem Spirit. Bear is the choice to go for being in the front lines. Resistance to almost all damage is pretty darn epic. Barbarians are already hard enough to kill in the first place, and now you make it that much harder by adding everything but psychic damage to their list of resistances. Eagle is good for mobility in combat. Being able to move about the battlefield with less risk is quite useful. Disadvantage on opportunity attacks. You can move away, and if you want to keep your attack action, you can choose not to disengage, and your opponent has disadvantage on the attack. That's very helpful. Plus the extra movement. Elk totem is useful for scouting, being able to close gaps in combat and annoying the very short races. If you're playing a human, you have 30-foot movement, and then you add the extra 15 feet, you can run circles around a halfling in a heartbeat. But it's also extremely helpful in combat, because that means if you're against ranged units, you can close that distance much quicker, and reduce that risk. Tiger may not seem very useful, but if you're in a treacherous location that limits movement, being able to jump over or through obstacles can be very useful. Jumping does not get enough screen time. Creating a lot of dungeons, a lot of games that I see are very two-dimensional in a sense. Using elevation, using platforms, using the ability to climb, to reach things that are above you, stuff like that, it doesn't see enough time in gameplay. And having that path of the tiger in there, it just kind of highlights that point. Thinking in a three-dimensional way, thinking in that z-axis, thinking in that vertical axis, can really increase how the world is seen around your players, and will give that path of the tiger a moment to shine. Then you have path of the wolf, pack tactics, giving advantage to your allies as long as they're within 5 feet of you. That's amazing, and it's even more amazing if you have a rogue in the group. Free sneak attacks. It's great. Next one up, we have aspect of the beast. Bear seems like it doesn't too much. However, when dungeon crawling, being able to manipulate the environment could be the difference between finding a shortcut or not. It may also help with grappling. And as I mentioned before, dealing with the bookkeeping of how much can I carry, how much can I drag along with me? Do we need to go grab a cart to bring all this loot back home? Eagle is an interesting boon. Imagine being able to see an ambush a mile away, even at night, or spotting an escaped enemy who's got a head start. There's a lot of tactical and story use behind Eagle, and I've seen Murin use it to his advantage on many different occasions. Sometimes I forget he has it, and it's like, wait, oh shoot, I forgot you have that. And it kind of stymies me for the situation I was trying to put them in. But that's good. He's remembering a resource he has. Then we take a look at Elk, helping the travel speed for all of your party and mobility in combat. Double bonus. If you're traveling from point A to point B, I do a lot of travel in my world because I got an entire continent that they're exploring. Going from one location to another could take 2 weeks on foot. But if you have Path of the Elk, you cut that in half. And then you put them on a mount, and it cuts it down even more. What used to be a 2-week journey turns into 5 days. So, really cool. Then we have Tiger. A few free skills, not necessarily that amazing unless those skills are things that you didn't have access to and can help you in story progression or combat prowess. They're very subjective. I can't say one is better than the other. They are definitely subjective though. And then you have Wolf. Gives you a bit more of a roleplay bonus. However, moving at normal speed while stealthed is pretty darn cool. Being able to track at normal speed, really decent for those types of games that require it. Spirit Walker. This can be really useful when doing exploration style games, as learning information about the area you're in can be beneficial. If you, Mirren and Karana both used that spell, and they did it in such a way that they were in 2 completely separate locations, and they got a lay of the land that covered an extremely large radius, giving them insight that helped them. So if you don't have somebody that can do that, the Barbarian gets it pretty much for free, and it can be very helpful in wilderness and exploration style games. And then we have Totemic Attunement. As a capstone, this has some really useful choices no matter what your playstyle is. Bear gives a boon to your party. Disadvantage on attacks toward the party is extremely useful. Eagle gives you some more movement. You just have to be careful on where you stop when you do that burst of flight. But again, it takes into account that z-axis, that vertical axis. If you can get, if you can move 55 feet through the air and land in a position that makes you hard to reach, why not use it to your advantage? Elk moving through creatures, knocking them prone and doing damage. All of that is a pretty useful tool. Tiger gives you a charge-like attack with a follow-up bonus attack. Always amazing. And Wolf knocking creatures prone. Helpful for giving advantage on attacks and reducing mobility of enemies. All of them have uses that can assist pretty much any style of play or game style. And the last of the paths that I have, Path of the Zealot. This one I had fun reading because I hadn't actually taken a look at it. I find it amusing to see a creature who channels rage being of a divine inspiration. Inspired by their deity, these barbarians are zealots, warriors who channel their rage into powerful displays of divine power. Hey Twiz, how you doing today? No fireball on this stream. I'm just wrapping up going through the different paths for barbarians. So, yeah, these... I says, it's my stream. I says no fireball. I will have to admit I am kind of jelly that you'll be able to play that. I haven't played an Assassin's Creed since 2. Funny you should say that. I was just talking to some of the Heroes Approved team about building a website too. Valhalla is life. Unless you're playing God of War, then Valhalla means you're going to get hit by a nasty freaking attack. Well, we're looking at building a website that anybody who's affiliated to Heroes Approved will be able to, we'll pull them all together on the website, and you'll be able to browse through, check out the different channels and people who are part of the stream. Visit their dedicated pages. We'll have whoever's live will have a video that you can look into and then click on it to visit their channel. It's kind of a stream team type thing, yeah. I have the Dragons in the Dining Room website that I need to give some more love because I'd like to see it grow. Yeah, Folsham, Art, and I were discussing that a little bit. I'm not so sure about WordPress, but it is something that's being looked at. I just unmuted myself. It didn't like me. I'm glad that it, with it having the Twitch integration already in there, that's cool. I'm also looking at trying to integrate like a Twitter feed, Instagram feed, things like that. Yeah, I was in a couple as well. That's why I was telling the guys that it's a very doable thing. But this is more for um no, not that I'm aware of. Because there were a few of them that I ended up backing out of because I ended up getting lost in the shuffle of things. Oh, okay. Okay. I may have to go visit again just to see the layout. But I've kind of digressed a little bit here. What's up? Right. Is. I understood the context. So yeah, it's not so much specifically that type of stream team thing. This is more of just a community portal. So it'll I'm looking at integrating all of the things that I may be trying to bite off more than I can chew, but I'd like to do the Instagram feeds, the Twitter feeds, all of that stuff so that people can find them and look at the most recent posts and then potentially finding a way of bringing merch stores and stuff into it. I am not familiar with that. Oh, gotcha. That I'm familiar with. I haven't seen it, but I know who you're talking about now. Um, so yeah, it's going to be a massive undertaking once we start moving forward. Cool. Yeah, we'll have to take a look into it and see what it's going to take. Um, I don't have free time in the first place, so I'll just have less of it. The good news is it's not going to be all on my shoulders. I'm going to be working with the rest of the stream team to get it done. Oh, yeah. I try and give them as much love as I can, Miss Fatal Pillow. I mean, I was talking to Twiz the other day. I took a big step back from all the work I was doing. I'll work on my projects intermittently now instead of diving into the computer from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed, which is an extremely important thing to all you streamers and YouTubers out there. Give yourself some time off. I did not realize how much I was hurting myself by not doing that. There's your PSA for today. So yeah, the last path for barbarians. Now that I've tangented it off onto a whole nother thing here. Um, yes, the more you know. Yeah, I heard about that, Twiz. Path of the Zealot. Inspired by their deity, these barbarians are zealots, warriors who channel their rage into powerful displays of divine power. Starting at third level, you can channel divine fury into your weapon strikes while you're raging. The first creature you hit on each of your turns with a weapon attack takes extra damage equal to 1d6 plus half your level, half your barbarian level. Important because if you cross class, if you multi class, it does not add to this damage. The extra damage is necrotic or radiant. You choose the type of damage when you gain the feature, which means once you choose it, that's what it is. It doesn't change. And you can choose either necrotic or radiant, which are the two damage types that are associated to the divine. At third level, you also have a mark on your soul for endless battle. If a spell, such as Raise the Dead, has the sole effect of restoring you to life, but not undeath, meaning you can't be turned into, it doesn't work if you're turned into a zombie or skeleton. The caster does not need the material components to cast the spell on you. Necrotic is the reverse of divine, so they're considered part of the divine well, necrotic is the reverse of radiant, which radiant is divine. So yeah, never mind. Theology and things. So yeah, with that fanatical focus, if somebody decides to revivify you, they don't need that diamond anymore. They just, and you're alive. I'm rambling, Twiz. It's been a long night for me and a long day at work for me, so my brain is kind of tapioca. Because Folshemart said tapioca earlier. Thank you for the bits. Oop, I scrolled too far. Now you can read it. I do not like tapioca. So there. The next one here is Fanatical Focus. Starting at 6th level, the divine power that fuels your rage can now protect you. If you fail a saving throw while you're raging, you can re-roll it, but you must use the new roll. You can use this ability only once per rage. Tell you what, I will refuse tapioca and shave my face. Neener, neener, neener. For those of you not in the know, Twisted Drake and Miss Fatal Pillow are also real-life friends of mine and fellow streamers. Twisted Drake, if I remember correctly, will be starting to stream Assassin's Creed Valhalla very shortly here, so you guys can see the game on his new setup because he had to fix his stream layout when his hard drive died. That sucked. A 12-hour stream tomorrow. And you can watch as he backstabs all of the bad guys. It's going to be an amazing show. And I know something that's really amazing as well. He's got some brand new effects, artifacts, and animations that he has put into his stream. So you get to see a brand new Twisted Drake tomorrow at some time in the day, because he did not tell me when he's going to start streaming. At 10th level, you learn to channel divine power to inspire zealotry in others. As a bonus action, you unleash a battle cry infused with divine energy. Up to 10 other creatures of your choice within 60 feet of you that can hear you gain advantage on attack rolls and saving throws until the end of your next turn. Pretty decent. And 6:30-ish is the time that Twisted Drake will be streaming. I'm not sure how much after 6:30-ish is, but we'll find out. Lastly, Rage Beyond Death. While you're raging, having 0 hit points does not knock you unconscious. You still must make death saving throws, and you suffer the normal effects of taking damage while at 0 hit points. However, if you would die due to failing a death saving throws, you do not die until your rage ends. And then you only die if you still have 0 hit points. Wait, what? That has definitely been a minute. For those of you who don't know what just happened, Stream just asked for a Shatner, which is one of the things that we have as a redeem that you can use during any of our streams. If someone is already dead inside, would they just fail all saving throws? Existential crisis does not necessarily equate to physical death. wrong button. That's the button I want. And my wrap up on this one here, the path of the Zealot is pretty good at saving you from death, or at least making it less harsh. The bonus damage is appealing and the support for your party is nice, but it may feel like you're falling behind at certain tiers of play. You know what? Quit doing that to me, Miss Fatal Pillow. You know, that happens to me a lot, Twiz. Whole bunch of this. Um, so the first thing here, we've got Divine Fury. Extra damage is always nice. It only happens once on your attack, but it's really nice. And as you scale, as you get higher tiers of Barbarian, that's a pretty significant bonus. At level 20, you're doing 20 points of or you're doing 10 points of damage before you even roll the die. That is significant. The only hard part is in certain locations that extra damage may be completely worthless because they're immune to the type of damage that you're dealing. Pro streamer, yeah, I still have years to go before I become pro streamer. I'm 100 years too early to call myself that. Warrior of the Gods, a free res when you die. Heck yeah. I mean, they're not having to have specific spell components is great because some of those spell components cost a lot. Thank you, Miss Fatal Pillow. Love you too. But, and this is a very important thing that I've seen in 5th edition, it is really hard, really, really hard to kill a character. There are so many tools, there are so many things out there that can help players survive that it's very hard to kill a character. So you may not see much use for it. Then we have Fanatical Focus. A free reroll when you fail a save, an important save, that's almost overpowered. The balancing part is you can only use it once per rage. But it can really save your hide in late game. Yeah, I know, Twiz. I've actually seen some blooper videos, and it's so fun when you see these guys that have 20, 30,000 viewers, and all of a sudden they're talking and nothing's happening. It makes me feel better as a human knowing that I make the same mistakes as the pros. I already told Twiz, no fireball during the stream. Then we have Zealous Presence. A free round of advantage for your party is great. Even better that this is a bonus action, allowing you to deal out a few good hits as well. So you grant bonus action to your party and you can swing. It's a little bit better than some of the other things that give party advantage. And then Rage Beyond Death. As a capstone, this is pretty insane. Combining this with Persistent Rage, you basically do not lose rage until combat is over, and if your healer is on top of things, you will never need to worry about dying. The moment you say I rage, at that point in time as a Zealot Barbarian, you are, in a manner of speaking, immortal. That is crazy. So, all of that information brings us around You don't feel the love? I heard the love. Yes, at level 20, a Turesk is rough. It's nowhere near as bad as it was in 3.5, in my opinion, though. Um, yeah, I mean, if you gave something that uh, like the spear from Curse of Strahd, if you gave that spear, the blood spear, to a barbarian, a zealot barbarian, it hits with the spear, he gains health. He hits with the spear, he gains health. It's stupid. So yeah, I mean, you can really. What the heck? Thackle ball? What? Um, so yeah, when you take a look at these paths, it really does. It really does give you an idea on how you want to prioritize your attribute points. Um, Figuring out what path you'd like to follow is the starting point. Now we take a look. Ah, there are some days I just don't know what to do with you, Twiz. All right. So now that we've looked into what path, now we have to see what the stats mean to you. And I'm not going to describe what the stats mean because I did that in an earlier video dealing with how to fill out a character sheet. If you want to know what the stats mean, go back and watch that one on YouTube. In this situation, I'm going to describe what strength means to a barbarian. Strength will increase your damage and to hit rolls. Many of your features, both core and path related, require attacking with a strength-based weapon, strength-based melee weapon, or rolling a strength-based check. With your advantage to strength checks and saving throws while raging, you'll get high numbers a lot. Dexterity. This will help with your unarmored defense feature if you choose not to wear armor. It will also help increase your armor class when wearing your light or medium armor. You'll also see a benefit with danger sense feature when making saving throws. Dexterity, as we noticed going through the different paths, it doesn't need to be absurdly high because you have a number of core features that help you with the fact that your dex may not be a focal point. Next up is Constitution. This is going to affect your hit points. It's also going to help increase your bonus to the unarmored defense feature. You take a look at the Relentless Rage feature. I didn't turn on a blender. It's the fan is going loose. I told you this. The 120 millimeter fan I have on my case is getting loose. I gotta figure out how to pin it down. Again, with Constitution, the Relentless Rage feature will be improved with a higher Constitution score. No, I keep forgetting to do that. Let me see something here. Where is it? There. There. That should take care of that background noise. Neener, neener, neener. No rubber band needed. um, yeah, I know. I will have to fix that because if it gets loose and drops, that's bad all the way. For Constitution, again, the Battle Rager feature, Reckless Abandon, that's approved. Path of the Storm Herald, your Storm Aura is improved. I think I'll just find I should have some rubber bumpers around here. Wait, Phrasing, Twiz. Phrasing. Next up, we have intelligence. This has no impact on any of your class features. However, it will help save you against spells tossed in your direction that could potentially take you out of a fight or incapacitate you. It is for all intents and purposes. It can be for all intents and purposes your dump stat. Wisdom. This is a useful perk with the Ancestral Guardian feature, Consult the Spirits. Other than that, just helpful with increasing your saving throw versus spells. It could, and then Charisma. This helps for the Berserker feature, Intimidating Presence, or helping with your spell saves. So you'll notice very much a melee style class. The wisdom and charisma based features, both of them are slightly non-combat oriented. So you can put your lower stats in intelligence, wisdom, and charisma and not hurt your character too much. I would say, however, having a decent score in intelligence and in those three is nice. Personally, I would choose charisma as the dump stat over intelligence, as intelligence and wisdom tend to be the more common saving throw spells. Charisma is used a handful of times for the charms. It's a toss-up. Oh, good Lord. Are you talking to me, Twiz? After you figure out where your attribute points are going to go? All right. I'm worried about you. I've seen some of the stuff you come up with. I'm not sure if I should be afraid or excited. After you choose your attributes, right? Both. Then we get to choose our race. Or you can choose your race and then your attributes. Really doesn't matter which way. With the exception of Path of the Battle Rager, any race is open for Barbarian. The trick here is knowing how it will affect the allocation of your attributes. Each race will have a set of attributes that they will increase simply by choosing them. And this will change the final score for those respective attributes. And it should be taken into account when making your decision. Good news is, with your ASIs, the ability score increases, you can choose any of the near 58 race options, and you'll be just fine in the long run. You can choose a creature that has a bonus to charisma and intelligence, and your stats are still going to be allocated the same way as somebody who chose a race that gives a bonus to strength and constitution. You'll just take a little bit longer to get there. Not going to hurt you in the long run, though. However, though, you will find that most barbarians will choose something like human, mountain dwarf, or half-orc due to the increase in strength and constitution, the two primary attributes. There are a few other races found in the other source books that will do the same. I just didn't have time to look them all up. But this simply helps reinforce that the strength of a barbarian, making them that much more dangerous and difficult to kill. It's a good choice. It's generally a good idea to go with a race that has them. Could also choose strength and dex or con and dex. Any of those combinations are more in tune with the barbarian than others. So you do have some versatility, but more often than not, you're going to want to go with something that has a strength and con mod. Then we get into weapons and armor. Picking your gear for a barbarian is pretty simple. You can do well using the loadout that's provided by the class section of the PHB. When choosing your weapon, you'll find that using weapons that have larger damage dice or multiple dice will be beneficial because of the brutal critical feature. More damage, more damage, more damage. If you go with a shield, picking a weapon that has the versatile property is a pretty good choice. It allows you to do more damage if you choose not to don your shield by going with two-handed attacks, which generally increases the damage of that attack by 1 die. So if you have a longsword that does a longsword that does 1d6 damage, swinging it one-handed with a shield, it'll do 1d8 damage swinging it two-handed and no shield. Fighting with two weapons is not really a big bonus to the Barbarian's damage output, since you will not get your strength modifier to the damage with your second or offhand weapon. Classes like Fighter and Ranger get two-weapon fighting, which allows you to add your modifier to the second attack, making fighting with two weapons a much better choice. For a Barbarian, you're losing out easily on +4 damage. And that is significant in the long run. So choosing a weapon that has the two-handed property and does massive damage, or choosing sword and shield, as it were, giving yourself a bit more survivability. Those are the types of directions you want to go, more often than not. When looking into armor, it's worth weighing out whether unarmored defense is going to be more beneficial. If you do not have a large dexterity modifier, 2 or less, then grabbing armor may be a better choice. Unarmored defense with a +2 to dex and a +2 to con will give you an armor class of 14. If you look at the list of armor, there's 4 choices of armor that are better than your unarmored defense. So when you take a look at your armor, you have to see if it's a better choice to pick something up or not. The good news is the shield does not affect that decision, because it's just a +2 bonus to your AC, whether you're armored or unarmored. Cheese Whiz, you could definitely use it as armor. Crispy Taco Shell, you could definitely use that as armor. However, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble if you're dealing with wilderness exploration, as you're going to be followed by all of the creatures who want to then make you dinner. Taking a look at the next part of building the Barbarian, skills and your background. The rest of your character, as I said, for your skills, all but animal handling and nature are strong choices. The latter two are going to be more role-play focused and dependent on the game style you're playing. So you'll have to figure that out as you're building your character, if either of those two choices are going to be beneficial to the style of game you're playing. Crispy Taco Shell is much... Oh, Crispy Taco Shell, then it rains, becomes soggy corn tortilla. You know, he's got a point there. Paladin in a hard taco shell armor that only goes out on Tuesdays because taco night. I don't know what to say, Twiz. I mean, part of me is sitting here going, I want to make a spoof game making meme characters like this so bad. And the other part of me is going, only you. So that's the thing about skills. Those two choices, you have to make sure that they fit the game style you're playing. Especially, you know, nature, for example, both nature and animal handling, they're not going to help you out if you're doing a dungeon crawl. Not very much. They might have their moments, but it's going to be very few and far between. If you're doing an exploration or wilderness style game, then those two may have a much noticeable impact to the game. all the rest of the choices that you have, they're going to be helpful in um, for your backgrounds. Also, you can choose just about anything and it will be helpful. There are a few that may not feel right, such as the acolyte or sage. But even then, if you're playing with the idea, working on the role play, and trying to come up with something unique, imagine the path of the zealot barbarian being an acolyte, because this is a path that is given power by their deity. A sage could have learned the power of the berserker from some ancient tomes. So you could easily use any background and make a role play purpose behind it. But there are other backgrounds that just feel more appropriate. One of the most common ones is Outlander or Hermit. Those work just fine, and they feel, a lot of people feel that they're much better suited to that class. Now, when we look at the barbarian and gameplay, almost every barbarian is going to do their work by standing toe-to-toe with whatever creature the party has encountered. They're going to respond to situations with aggression and a lack of social etiquette. Displays of strength and courage are going to be ways to solve problems. This does not exclude the book-smart barbarian, however, who's learned to harness the rage in times of need. The charismatic general who can rally the troops with a rousing speech and then turn into a bloodthirsty barbarian. However, most commonly, they are, by definition, barbaric. And that's just, it's what the class lends itself to being. We've seen Conan the Barbarian. Those of you who are heavy into anime have seen the anime Berserker. Anybody who's studied Norse mythology, it all lends itself to that style of gameplay. When in an encounter, rage is a resource. As such, it should be used wisely. In early levels, a player should use rage only when the situation looks like it's going to be difficult or deadly. Because you only have two for the first few levels, just because you ran into a couple goblins doesn't mean you necessarily have to rage out at them. You may want to wait and see if a more difficult combat comes along. But it is always up to your judgment. Axel has a point there, Twiz. The other thing, as you grow in levels, your rage becomes more versatile. You'll gain more uses. It will last longer, and it will provide benefits that go beyond just smacking things harder and saving your butt from getting hit. Now you're going to be using your rage as a resource to help the entire party. So sometimes it'll allow you to use your rage to mop up those stupid little battles against a half a dozen kobolds. And have one or two left over for the fight that's coming up later. Be very careful when dealing with ranged and caster enemies. Both, Miss Fail Pillow. Be very careful when dealing with ranged and caster enemies. The need to close the distance in order to really shine puts you in danger. May not be able to rage to mitigate the damage, since a missed attack, distance left to cover, may cause you to drop rage without ever using it. If you've got a caster that can lob a firebolt at you at 120 feet away, and you've only got 45 feet of movement, 90 if you double move, you're raging in that time frame. You're not attacking a hostile, which is one condition to drop rage. And if that firebolt misses you, that's the other condition to drop rage. You just wasted it. So dealing with ranged enemies it's something you have to pay attention to. Casters are even more dangerous since they can hit you with spells that keep you out of combat altogether. A well-timed charm, hold person, wall of fire, and so forth can keep a barbarian out of a fight for a few turns. There are, as you know, as in later levels, that becomes less and less of a problem, but it's still a problem. This is also compounded by the fact that barbarians will usually have fairly low saves when it comes to spellcasters: intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So casters are a very difficult opponent for a barbarian if the caster uses strong tactics. And then we get to wrap this up. Barbarians. They are a very fun class to play. They're hardy, they deal a ton of damage, usually don't require a lot of effort to understand. New players could play this class, find it enjoyable, and not have the headache of remembering a lot of rules. There are very few specific conditions that have to be met in order to do what a barbarian does best. There's no bookwork to keep track of for all of the attacks, buffs, and so forth, like a caster would need. It's a fairly straightforward class that can really make a player feel like they're a force to be reckoned with. Some barbarians do have a hearty laugh, yes. So, a lot of stuff to cover with the barbarian, and it was the very first episode in this series. I'm sure there's more I could have covered. I would love to hear feedback on what you would like to see in addition to this, what you thought could be improved on. I want to try and make these as helpful as possible. Cross-classing. Very good point, Twiz. I will definitely have to touch on that. Add that going forward. I can go over some of that very briefly with the barbarian. When taking a look at the other classes with the barbarian, as we have noted, barbarian is predominantly a melee fighter. So when you take a look at what classes can work together with it, you have to keep that in mind. One of the multi-class, I have no idea where I put the player's handbook. We start with fighter, okay? If you have a fighter cross-classed with a barbarian, there are many different combinations there that just simply work. You have the champion fighter that gives improved critical. You have, yes, barbarian druid can be an amazing thing. You have the battle master fighter, which allows your barbarian to use their attacks, and every attack could have a secondary effect, such as knocking a creature prone, disarming them, things like that. Fighter is a strong multi-class that you can put in with a barbarian, as they both also share the same primary stats. Strength and constitution work just as well for a fighter as they do a barbarian. Let's see here. I have a list here somewhere. So we'll just cheat this. I had to make a list of all of the things I'm working on. However, there are a couple of things in the fighter class that just don't really work. So you have the arcane archer. That focuses on ranged attacks. Raging, being a barbarian, if you didn't put a lot of your attribute points into dexterity, it kind of weakens the arcane archer. But if you have a decent dexterity score. Now you have a character that can attack from range, save the rage, and then use it when they get into combat, or they can rage while being the arcane archer, but not get a lot of the the spells that an arcane archer has access to. You have the cavalier. This is a mounted fighter. Perfect. Now you're a raging, whirling ball of damage on the back of a horse that can also do damage, and you have a weapon with reach. If you have a lance or a pike or something, it just gives you a whole bunch of new tools to use in your repertoire, including a mount. Can't go wrong there. Eldritch Knight, that one doesn't really work well with the Barbarian. There's spell casting involved, and when you're raging, you just can't cast spells. That's the only subclass that really doesn't work. Gnome yeeting Barbarian, that doesn't matter what multi-classing you do, you can just yeet gnomes because they're tiny. Gunslinger. Similar to the Arcane Archer, a Gunslinger would only be a good multi-classing option if you have a decent dexterity score to go along with it. Otherwise, a really fun combination because now you're shooting them at range with a rifle. Somebody sneaks up behind you, you rage out, rip their head off, and then go back to shooting people at range. Purple Dragon Knight. These are a good combination with the Barbarian as well, giving you a lot more in the defensive side of things. And then Samurai. Just the idea of running around with a ginormous katana raging out in a kabuki mask. I mean, it's awesome. Samurais, with the abilities that they have, and the Barbarian, there is some need for some dexterity with them, but it allows you a different way of using your attacks that are really nice. We then take a look at, what do we have? Bard. Bard Barbarian. Kind of sounds a little bit goofy at first. You can actually have a lot of fun with it, especially if you go with the College of Swords Bard, or the College of Whispers. But because a Bard is fairly spell-oriented, you're only going to get half of what a Bard is capable of if you choose any of the other ones. Your biggest help here, if you were to Barbarian cross-class into Bard, would be your College of Valor, College of Swords. Not College of Wit. College of Swords or College of Valor. Both of them do have a lot of combat-oriented stuff that does not necessarily need spell cast. Barbarian Cleric, again, it can work, but you're only going to get about half of what you want out of it. A lot of the spell casting abilities that they have you're just not going to see unless you're going to treat it as two individual classes as opposed to helping each other out. You can get some stuff out of it, like the War Domain could be very helpful. Death Domain could be helpful. Knowledge Domain, Tempest Domain, some of those could be very, very helpful, but spell casting side of the cleric, not going to be very impactful. But it could make for a decent character. The big part here, just like, and I forgot to mention this with the Bard, is you're splitting yourself up between 3 different stats that can really slow things down for you. cleric would require strength, constitution, and wisdom. A bard would require strength, constitution, and charisma. The fighter, you can get away with just strength and constitution. The druid, as Twisted Drake pointed out earlier, a druid barbarian cross class can be a lot of fun. Druids, if you go with Circle of the Moon, druid barbarian is silly and can be just downright annoying because their affinity to shape-shifting doesn't. Their shape-shifting forms still gain the effects of the barbarian. So you can shapeshift into a direwolf and then rage. Because shapeshifting is not a spell, you don't lose the form. Whereas almost all of the other druid forms, they're focused more on spell casting. And again, you'll be treating them as you will have a hard time getting a good balance between the use of both classes. And you'll be splitting you'll have a third stat that you'll need to look into because of the caster of the taking a look at the monk barbarian, that could be a lot of fun too. Monks tend to want to have more dexterity in their builds because of their mobility and movement, but every single one of their subclasses, with the exception of even the Way of the Elementals, because you're using key points, it's not spell casting, and can mix and match these different things together. So you could have a barbarian rage out and do an open hand strike using the open palm techniques of the monk and things like that. So they do work together quite well. Paladin Barbarian, I have one player playing one. We have a player playing one in the Nerevis campaign, and it's a little bit slower than doing something like fighter or monk, but it has some really interesting versatility in being able to rage out, use a divine smite, and you're not worried about your spells because they become a resource to increase your rage damage and your paladin smite damage. So they do have some synergy that can be really neat. Not 100% useful, but it does have some synergy that can be fun. And especially if you're building a character that is more focused on damage and survivability as opposed to spell casting and support. We then look at the Ranger Barbarian, and that one can work, but once again, you're looking at wanting a third stat with dexterity. If you're going with the Hunter Ranger, for example, using something like the Beastmaster Barbarian or Ranger, now you have yourself a pet. But with the limitations on how Beastmaster works. Well, hello there, Nat30s. How are you this evening? And thank you for the raid. I'm just wrapping up an evening discussing Barbarians. Oh, Parasite. Took me a moment. Hello, Parasite. How are you this evening? I hope your game went well, Nat30s. Yeah, as I was saying, I'm just wrapping up an evening discussing doing a class review on barbarians. Um, I'm taking a brief look into multi-classing and what type of synergies we have there. Ah, wonderful. And yes, we've had a great stream. You guys have any questions or comments? No, not all barbarians are crazy, just the fun ones. You're correct. Ah, DM prep. I have to start looking more and more into that. My players in Lorimir are going to the Abyss. I haven't done an Abyss game in a long time. Well, they're level 11. One of them is on the path. Ah, thank you very kindly, Parasite, for the follow. Um, one of my players is on the road to godhood. One of my players is trying to revive the Sword of Cass. Another one of my players is has been asked if she wants to become the guardian to the font of magic and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. Trying to figure out what to do. And the player that wants to revive the Sword of Cass went, "Hey, I have to go find the souls of my family. Where am I going to do that?" And realized that, the Abyss is the perfect place to start. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yes, thank you guys for rating in. I am kind of saddened that you guys are catching me at the very end of the stream. I ended up doing, actually, yeah, teach the demons and devils a lesson for messing with souls because players need to get the souls back. I just did a 16-page review on barbarians. I'm surprised that it didn't take me longer than it did. I'll be doing this for every single class. For the next 14 foreseeable Dragons Discourses, I will be doing a class review on each of them. I'm wrapping this one up right now as we're talking about some subclass synergies. Just talking about the Ranger. Yep. Certain Ranger classes will work well with the Barbarian. As I was saying, the Beastmaster Ranger wouldn't work very well because some limitations on how to use your animal companion that would reduce your ability to use rage because you have to use your action to have your companion do certain things for you. And if you're not attacking or being damaged as a barbarian, then rage. So that subclass might not be so well. But other rangers like Hunter, Stalker, Monster Slayer, Horizon Walker, pretty much all the other ones can work decently with the Barbarian, giving you that ranged / melee combination. But there is that need for a third stat in dexterity. We then move on to Rogue. Rogue Barbarian, it sounds like it should be an absolute fun multi-class, but with the heavy need for dexterity on a rogue, it would change how you view your attributes in building a barbarian rogue combination. Sneak attack requires you to be able to sneak up on your opponent or gain advantage on your opponent. All of the barbarian subclasses give advantage to people around you, not necessarily yourself. However, this is where it gets tricky. If you use reckless attack while raging, can trigger sneak attack. So it's kind of goofy that way. The assassination rogue with the barbarian could be very unique. Using a trickster rogue with a barbarian, arcane trickster, not going to work so well because of the magic. Inquisitive could be helpful as it might give you some advantages in combat as well. Scout, not going to do a lot in combat to assist with the barbarian, but does have some roleplay stuff that could work. Thief, a little bit helpful, not a lot. The one that I think would work best would be Swashbuckler, as it allows you to do a lot more manipulation of the battlefield and gain that sneak attack bonus while raging. Because you have that mobility, because you have the added possibilities of advantage. Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. Those three will not work with the Barbarian. They're casters. They're just outright casters. And as a Barbarian, cannot cast spells while raging, requires you to use a third stat, such as Charisma, Int, or Wisdom, that could be better used for your Strength or Constitution. Cross-classing into any type of caster is just not a good idea. So those are my quick takes on multi-classing with a barbarian. I will have to add those thoughts to the write-up that I do going forward. For anybody interested, if you're catching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on the VOD, and those of you who are live, any of you guys want a transcript of this, the write-up that I just did, feel free to ask me for that. I will give you a copy of it. I'm also looking at potentially just combining all of it into one document and providing that as well. But yeah, this has been a very interesting stream for me, and I hope it's been a lot of fun. You guys, even those who just popped in, I hope it gave at least a little bit of insight. Does anybody out there have questions about the Barbarian? I covered a lot, and I may have glossed over something you wanted to know more about. Or those of you who just hopped in, if there's any questions you have about the Barbarian that you didn't hear me cover, feel free to toss those out right now. We have a little bit of time before the stream's over. As I said earlier, this will be posted on YouTube, so you guys can catch it there and share it with your friends. And I will be definitely doing a little bit more research going forward because that multi-class question caught me sideways and was a good question. I'm glad you did, Gangris. I'm actually kind of happy you stuck around and listened in on it. I know that there's a few of the viewers that we have from Heroes Approved that are looking to get more insight into D&D, so I'm hoping this is going to be useful for all of them as well. For those of you watching, if you have people that are new to D&D that are learning about the game, they've only played a few, they want a review on the game and the different classes. Basically, anybody who's interested in learning or relearning D&D stuff, please point them in this direction. Dragon's Discourse is not meant to be me rambling on. It's meant to be a stream where people can come in and discuss anything D&D and tabletop related. So it would be great to see new faces pop in and ask questions and contribute to these types of videos. We start at 8 o'clock Central every Monday, and I'll go until 11 o'clock Central every day on Mondays. Not every day. So yeah, spread the word to people who want to learn more. I would be happy to hear from them. We've had a few newbies pop in and ask some really good questions. Um, we also have, or I also have on Dragon's Discourse nights where I will do a community world building project. It's the world of Tavreen. I have the information in World Anvil as we continue to finish up on the world. Once it's wrapped up, it will be accessible to anybody in who wants it, as it is a community project, so it is open to the community. If I don't have one of these classes done for the week, I will do the world building so that I can wrap up and do a proper stream for a class review. But I will try and do them all back to back with limited interruptions. So once again, thank you everybody out there for joining me. I hope this was enjoyable. If you're on YouTube, please drop a comment, a like, a subscribe, ask questions, leave stuff there. If you want to join our Discord, I have the link in the chat right there. You can come join us on there, where you can also do the same thing. We have a questions and answers channel that you can hop in on. For those of you on Twitter, I mentioned just a moment ago, I do this every Monday, 8 to 11 Central. Throughout the week on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, we have our Dungeons and Dragons games. We have 6 different games, 5 different DMs, so there's something new going on every day we stream. This Friday, a friend of the stream, the Liching Hour, is doing an X-Crawl game from the DCC gaming system. Please, if you want to see what that's all about, you may even be able to join in on it. He will be doing that on Friday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. I will not be doing any streaming. Ditter will not be doing any streaming, but our friend Twisted Drake will be doing his 12-hour stream of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Please give him a check if you would be so kind. He's just starting to get back into streaming after a long hiatus. In the meantime, everybody, have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining me, and we will catch you on Wednesday. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I sign off, does anybody want to raid somebody? I got 11 viewers here, and we should go spread the love. Who do I see live? Don't got anybody. We have suggestions out there in chat. We don't need to do a guide the raid. Just if anybody's got a suggestion, we'll go raid somebody who needs some love. Oh, Nat 30s. Behold roleplay. Did I type that right? Yes, I typed that right. All right, so I have no idea who Behold Roleplay is, so this will be new for me too. Let's hop in there and hit them with a whole bunch of raid icons, and we'll see you guys later. Here we go.